That was a tough one to follow. It's been a lot of great speeches today, so perhaps at the risk of me tanking, maybe we should just clap for everyone and then pretend that this is just a little extra thing at the end. So let's give a round of applause for everyone there. On the left is Tool's logo, and then on the right is me. I'm a director at Tool. I'm not an employee or creative director or anyone who can really represent the company in any true way, but we won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year, which is pretty cool, to be the production company of the year. So very happy about that, to just stick this slide everywhere. Tool, in some ways, is similar to Unit 9, we just went before. We also do live action, experiential, VR, and digital. We've got all kinds of Hollywood directors, installation artists, VR, digital artists, really all types of talent doing all different kinds of projects. But I'm not here to really talk about Tool too much. I'm here to talk about something that excites me, which is doing things that I've never done before. And I want to try to explain to everyone how I go about it, to see if perhaps there's something to be learned, hopefully. So the thing about doing things that you've never done before, which is exciting to me, is that it doesn't get boring. I have this huge fear of just being bored to death, of becoming good at one thing and then people asking me to do that, and being paid a lot of money and being stuck in this rut of like, there's all this money and you're good at this one thing and now you're stuck doing it forever because you're addicted to the money and you just keep coming back and coming back. So I've told myself that I will not do the same thing over and over, and I won't specialize in everything, and every project has to be a real adventure for me and everyone who I'm working with. So there's not really a formula. I never had thought about it before, but I tried to jot down a few things to try to share with everyone. So I figured out 5 random things that I think make sense. Research, collaboration, love, money, and press. So I'm going to talk about those 5 and hopefully inspire at least one person to go out and do something new at the end of this. So the first step for me with anything is research. And if someone happened to do research about me and knows what's happening here and why this little yellow woman is carrying a paperclip, I'm happy to buy you a drink later. So research for me begins every morning from 9 a.m. to about 1 p.m. I research contemporary art, new hardware, software, collaborators, engineering, fabrication, architecture, graphic design, storytelling, like everything. But I don't just like read it and I don't just look at it, I organize it. So with each of these categories, I set up folders, whether it's in Pinterest or on my hard drive, so that it's all really, really organized so that when I'm ready to begin something, I can go back to it and pull everything together really quickly. And one really important thing also is whenever I come across someone's work who I love, I just send an email out right away saying, your work is awesome, maybe we should collaborate one day. So the research takes a lot of different forms. As trends change, you end up researching different kinds of things. You know, one day it's 3D printing, the next it's VR, and it keeps shifting. For me, it's fun to kind of ride the wave and hopefully be a little bit ahead of it. When 3D printing emerged, I thought it would be fun to play around with it, but not to just like print an object. I wanted to make a movie or a music video, and so I had this idea of designing every frame in Cinema 4D and then 3D printing it and shooting every frame in stop motion. So, yeah, and then up there, I sort of mentioned this idea of pitching what you want to do next and not what you've already done. And I always am so obsessed with this that I even have a problem putting together presentations with work that I've already done because I hate looking back into the past. But why not? So this project, this 3D printing project that I'm going to talk about a bit, that ties back into the research. I got excited about this idea of printing every frame. And so I pitched the story of a tiny man and woman going through the streets of Los Angeles, collecting trash and supplies to build a raft to escape into the ocean. And I pitched it to this band called Cut Copy from Australia. They liked it a lot, and they gave me the green light to make a music video for this track called We Are Explorers. So the 3D printing was like a total nightmare. Which is what happens when you specialize in things that you don't know how to do and that you've never done before. I ended up taking almost a month to get all the 3D printing done. I had to hire 3D printers in Philadelphia and Detroit and LA because it takes forever to print every little object. We had made the crazy decision to print them with UV reactive filament and light them with black lights so that we could shoot it outside and they would glow like little lights. And that meant we had to shoot at night. So we shot for 7 straight nights from sunset to sunrise to capture these little characters. And we even had to start shooting before we had half of the 3D prints done because they were taking so long. So we started shooting. By the 3rd night, we got the rest of it, but we were already totally exhausted and ready to go home. And the police kept coming every night. We got shut down by the police, I think, 5 times because we had no permits, and we're shooting in Beverly Hills and all kinds of fancy places in LA. But you know, in terms of a stop-motion music video, I didn't want to just do that. I had big dreams for these little characters and wanted to subvert the process of a music video release. So I reached out to BitTorrent and created a partnership to release the storyboard, the song, the music video, and all of the 3D printing files as a free open source download. So I gave everyone instructions of how to download it, how to manipulate the Cinema 4D files, where they could print it, so that they could take it and print it and shoot it themselves, print it and own little memorabilia from the band if they were a fan, or take the process and make their own 3D printed animation. So it became the most downloaded 3D printing files ever. Before it was like 60,000 on an Audi concept car, and it ended up everywhere from Time Magazine to The Guardian and really everywhere. And we still hold the record for the most downloaded 3D printing files. And this really just started as a research experiment that turned into a project with a big band and a big technology partner, and then Time Magazine. So this is one of my favorite images from the project, and also one of the most painful because we shot it when we went back to New York to do a few pickups, and we shot it in my friend's apartment on a piece of black acrylic. And we moved the acrylic while we were shooting it, doing a long exposure to create those really cool streaks. And when we got that image, we were like, shit, we never needed to go to LA, we never needed to shoot the whole night, but whatever, we did it, it's done. So, but it's still my favorite shot. So, after research, the next step for me is collaboration. So if 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. is research, then 6 p.m. to midnight is really where the collaboration happens. The 5 hours in between, I'm in France, so it's usually cheese and red wine. Without collaborators, nothing really is possible if you're trying to constantly do new things. Doing new things means working with new people, adding new people to a core team so that things don't get lost with too many people working at once. Always having a very multidisciplinary approach to find new solutions. And when you invite collaborators, to invite them to do the kinds of work that they want to do, not the kind of work that you want to do, so that people really feel empowered to do cool new things. And you know, to work in that way, you really have to be a fan of all of your collaborators and have faith and just let go and trust their instincts. The more talented the people are that you work with, the more freedom they deserve. So it's very important to never suffocate projects with ego. At this point, I do research in the morning because pretty much everyone I collaborate with is asleep until around 3, because I decided to move to France but still work a lot with people in New York and in LA. We try to have as diverse of a team as possible. You know, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of locations, because for me that creates new types of outcomes. If you don't want to do the same thing over and over, you have to mix things up as much as possible. For me, that also meant of office life. I really don't believe in it in any way for myself. I know it can work for some, but all of my projects are totally decentralized with no headquarters and no real time zone. So right now I'm working on projects in Paris, London, New York, LA, with people in maybe 8 different countries, and I work by myself at a desk in Lyon. So that really works for me, and I think it works well with this sort of ethos of experimentation. An important point for me that I realized a while ago was lots of creative people have like these amazing ideas, but they never make them happen. And I was one of them for a long time. I was really frustrated because I felt I had really, really cool ideas that should be produced, but other people had the power to kill them. And they would say, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, this, that. So at a certain point, I just decided to eliminate all these people. So anyone who could say no was gone, and I decided to start producing everything myself. And that's when I started building my own teams and really focusing on this idea of collaboration and acting more like a producer, where the idea itself wasn't enough. I always forced myself to figure out how can it be possible, how can we make it happen, how can we remove roadblocks, and how can we bring this thing to life. So the last time I had a job was in 2011. And it was a really amazing job at a really cool company, but I quit because I was bored. And the very first project that I got was the most challenging production that I've done, because I did it with just 2 people, and it was a pretty high profile project with a band called the XX, and it was done in LA. The idea was quite crazy. I pitched it with a friend of mine named Kyle McDonald, who many of you probably know. And we were surprised because it got approved right away, but we had no team and no infrastructure and no idea of how we were gonna produce it. This was our pitch. We made a few renders, and the idea was 50 robotic speakers would turn to face visitors, while a spatialized recording of the XX's song Missing would follow them through the space. So there were 4 connects set up in the corners of the structure. The connects would track you, and the song would constantly change with the stems moving based on wherever you are, so that you're basically remixing the song with your movement through the space. So this is what it ended up looking like. The way we brought it together was like Kyle brought in his roommate, who was this crazy engineer. I found a friend from elementary school in LA who was building sets, and I got him to do the fabrication. A friend from New York, I brought him out to film it and to shoot it. We were still short on people, so Kyle started tweeting, and suddenly some super talented designer developer showed up and worked for the whole week for free. So things come together if you ask and if you invite people. You'd be surprised the kinds of things that are possible. It was really crazy on this, building everything from scratch. We laser cut all of the acrylic, we soldered all the electronics, all of the fabrication was totally custom made, and that's what made it just so insane. There was 150 aircraft cables that went through the floor up into the ceiling to hold all the wires and the motors and the speakers. And I spent, I don't know, 18 hours of one day underneath like a 14-inch board on my back, running them all through the whole thing. And it taught me a lot about the process of fabrication and not proposing ideas like that anymore. But the craziest part of it was that I ran the whole project from my personal bank account. And our budget, I think, was $60,000. And I had $3,000 in my bank account before we started the project. So suddenly my bank account hit $63,000, but then I worried like, oh shit, what if we like run out of money, and then I run out of money, and then I have to actually pay these people who've been working with me. So we all decided that we would work together and then split whatever profit was left, which it worked out. We ended up all getting like $5,000 in profit in the end. So no one was hurt or bankrupt. Another fun collaboration that I did recently with another band is called Edge of the Universe. It's a performance art piece that was done at the New Museum in New York. A while ago I was introduced to the band Little Dragon, and I wanted to work with them. I tried collaborating with them, and we Skyped and had all these different kinds of ideas, but nothing really happened. Then Samsung called me one day and they said, we want to do some cool installation or something with our new phone. So I called up Little Dragon. I said, you guys want to do some musical performance kind of thing with the phone? And they're like, yeah, cool, whatever you want to do, let's try it. So what we pitched to Samsung was this modular interactive instrument that would explore themes of time and space through a live audiovisual performance, sampling audio recorded by NASA in space and present audio recorded on Earth. And the whole project would be an homage to space travel and the future of mobile synthesizers. So all of the instruments that we ended up creating for the band were made in WebGL. They were made to run on the phones. They were all wireless, and they were put into this crazy spaceship structure. We made a synth, a drum machine, a keyboard, and a live sampler. And so as the band touched the phones, they controlled real-time WebGL graphics on the phone, which also controlled all of the LEDs that lit the flying saucer. And it also controlled projections that were mapped around the whole entire room in the new museum. So it was a really cool, really immersive experience. What was special about the collaboration is like my team, we had to make these instruments for a band to be comfortable performing on. I mean, imagine you're a famous band and someone's like, can you perform for 45 minutes on these phones in front of tons of people in a museum? Be like, hell no, we're going to sound terrible. But they had to trust us and we had to trust them, and the project worked out because of this mutual trust and because we had talked about collaborating before, and the way that the project was sort of brought together was we had already wanted to do something and we were looking for that opportunity. So I think that it's important that everyone is allowed to sort of embrace their skills and recognize for what they are before things happen, so that there's a lot of mutual trust once you get started. So the next step after collaboration that I'm going to talk about is love. One day I had a very strange, I decided to buy an articulated mannequin where you can move all of the arms and legs and the neck. And I wanted to make a music video with it, so I proposed it to a guy in Vampire Weekend, and he was like, yeah, I've got $1,000 for a music video. And I was like, cool, that's how much the mannequin costs. So I spent like a month with this crazy mannequin and lost a lot of money. But it was a lot of fun, and her name is Cindy, and you can see the video on YouTube or anywhere. The artist is Chris Baio, he's the bassist in Vampire Weekend. But anyways, I want to talk a little bit about working for free and for the love of it. And I'm going to talk about a few different kinds of projects, not just crazy, high-tech, new stuff, but things that are just new for me and for others. So I always wanted to be a screenwriter. I think a lot of people dream of that. But I'd never written a movie, I never went to film school, and then an opportunity came up. A director friend said that USA Network was funding different short films, and they were giving quite a lot, and they just needed an idea that was character-driven, where the whole story was about this character. I didn't even know what that meant, but I had this idea of a young kid, a boxer, who had a phobia of being touched. And the idea was for his weakness to ultimately become his strength. I've always liked that idea of weakness becoming strength. So after his whole childhood of avoiding physical contact, one day his mom gets just totally fed up, and she enrolls him in boxing. And you realize just the first moment that he's in the boxing gym that a prodigy is suddenly born. And the reason is that he's obviously impossible to hit because he's been avoiding physical contact his whole life. So this is one of the scenes when we were shooting with the kid. The kid actually has become a big star now. He was in the new Netflix series, The Get Down, one of the main kids in that story. So for me, the project taught me that I can write any kind of story. And it gave me a big confidence after. It took a long time. Just the writing process was 3 months. But I decided to do it because I wanted to learn it, and I really wanted to try something new. And I wrote the whole script, and I even wrote every shot for the director. And after seeing how the director took every single shot and did it how I had written it, I was like, wow, maybe I can be a director too. So it gave me a lot of courage to try other kinds of things later on. This is one of my most recent projects, the first project in Europe that I did since moving to France, and probably my favorite passion project. It's an homage to the light and space movement from the 60s, if anyone's familiar with it, but with a very modern context and twist. So the 8 phases of enlightenment, it's a mixed reality experiment that sort of goes from sensory overload to sensory deprivation from the first experience to the last. And it's this collaborative mixed reality audio-visual experiment with 8 physical installations functioning as a conduit into 8 virtual realities. Some people have called it a VR project, and a lot of festivals have inquired about it, but I'm almost nervous to send it to these festivals because everywhere that VR is shown is film festivals, and this isn't a film, it's a contemporary art piece, and even the way that we photographed it, we didn't even use VR headsets because I didn't feel that it was important to the project. So this is the total budget of this project, 1,000 euros. Just the acrylic was 10,000 euros, but we got it for free by inviting a sponsor. We built the whole thing in Barcelona. 2 friends who worked on it trucked it to Paris. We had people working in New York, Paris, Lyon, Barcelona, everyone for free. And this has nothing to do with Tool. Tool isn't asking people to work for free. These are my personal art projects. Just Samsung gear that we use in the phones was like 7,000 euros. So my solution for hardware is always buy it on Amazon, use it, and then return it, and get all your money back before your credit card is charged. And it works. So one of the fun things that we were playing with was the idea with VR installations and festivals and museums, there's like enormous lines because it takes forever. And there's just like hundreds of people waiting for 2 hours, staring at someone with a mask on their face, and it's the most boring thing ever. So I wanted to take that weakness and turn it into a strength, another theme in my work. So I wanted to create these physical installations where, like, when you're standing around it and you're looking at it, that it's cool, and that when you take a picture of your friend in this experience, that it's like pretty dope, and it's something that you could share. And like, we can't even see the VR thing on our head, and you notice I'm not even showing you what the VR looks like because it's not important. For me, this was a mixed reality piece where most of the audience saw it in a physical reality. And because of that, it made it something unique, and it made it something new. regardless of what was going on in that virtual world. In this particular case, if you're curious, this girl was falling down an elevator shaft of light infinitely. So you could stay in the experience for 40 minutes if you wanted to, because we had made a 45-second audio-visual loop with no clear beginning and end. So she's in this thing, and she's just falling and falling and falling and falling. And it was called 8 Phases of Enlightenment, so the second stage is kind of about losing yourself. But anyways, about doing these projects for love. I think it's very important to partner with musicians, festivals, museums, because even though they have very little or no money, they have huge communities. And if you're going to do this kind of work for free, you want to make sure that a lot of people see it. So partner with people, with institutions that need the help. Just make sure you get the freedom to do what you want to do, so that it's really mutually beneficial for everyone. When you create the installation or the film or whatever it is, you get this massive audience and they get something free. So it's been really important for me to have that step always included. Otherwise, there's this fear of putting all the time and energy into something that no one will ever see if you're not like a PR machine yourself. So I've given you a formula to be completely broke, living in your mom's basement, making art. And the next step is money. So it's actually not that complicated, because if you spend a lot of time and energy creating your own projects and defining your own work, people will come to you with big commercial projects, and you'll find the balance. You'll find that nice balance between art and commerce that will work out for you. But it takes time. I mean, it took me a few years to kind of figure it out, balancing doing some commercial freelance stuff with building a portfolio of interesting, more avant-garde work. So I started as a member of the New Museum Incubator for Art and Technology a few years ago, and while I was there, Intel was launching a new heart rate monitor for an in-ear headphone. And they wanted something around the heart rate monitor for their launch because the product wasn't ready. So I proposed this experimental drawing machine that would be powered by the heart rate of everyone at the party, where we'd make an original piece of art by the end of the night. So all of the lines that you see are actually people's heart rates that were drawn in real time. So they put their hand down on the bottom on a heart rate sensor, and the drawing machine would just take it away. So, excuse me, we had all kinds of interesting people participate, from 50 Cent to Carmelo Anthony. It was a lot of fun, and what was interesting was that Intel kind of took the lead, or took a lead from what I was already doing. You know, I was a member of the New Museum Incubator, and then they decided to rent the penthouse of the New Museum for their product launch. So instead of it being a very commercial, marketing-driven thing, suddenly Intel is embracing the contemporary art world, renting the top floor of this museum, and changing the way that their products and marketing are done in the exact way that I was hoping. But the thing is like it's the exact same ethos between the experimentation and the newness that I strive for with my personal work that now worked for Intel, and it got them all the press that they wanted and created a big moment for them at the museum. And this whole project was actually done in just 2 weeks from the time they contacted me to the time that it was finished. And that was really possible because we were always doing the research and the prototyping and the collaborating. This is one of my most recent projects, or big commercial projects, that was done at TED. It was a huge fabrication job that we did in New York, and then trucked the whole thing all the way to Vancouver, where they have TED Global. The project, the installation, was a climbable light pavilion that we set up in Vancouver. So it was pretty wild. Brands are unpredictable. Delta called up with 24 hours notice. We need something around dreams by the end of the day for TED. And I'd already been working on an idea. I already had been planning with collaborators, and we developed passion projects. So it turned out I even had a 3D render that fit perfectly with what they wanted. And so the pitch was really easy. It was like, so what if people could climb into the sky and the stars reacted to each step? So we built a system where every footstep controlled all of the lighting and controlled all of the sound. And what if you could watch from underneath? So people could actually go underneath the ropes and look up as though their friends were like climbing in anti-gravity in space. And what if the stars reconfigured to form constellations around you? So all of this was like literally already done. We were able to just pass it right off to Delta, and then suddenly we're all at TED producing this huge commercial project that fit perfectly with the kind of exploration that we were doing in personal projects. So yeah, in the past few years since I've been working like this, I've established a pretty good balance between commercial and art. These are all commercial projects up here, and there's videos of all of them all of them online. There's projects here for Nike, Sonos, Samsung, Acer, Intel, Puma, IBM, tons of different ones. So last but not least, PR is a really important thing to always think about. If you want to be doing new stuff and specializing in things you've never done before, if you don't get the press to write about you, then it's very hard to get people to come and ask for these kinds of projects from you. For some reason, people trust people who've had press write-ups. I don't know why, but it works for one reason or another. So a lot of artists and designers and programmers don't really think about story enough. People think about design, they think about functionality, but if you want PR, there has to be a clear story. There has to be like something clear to explain. And it's not like, it doesn't need to be a 3-act Hollywood, pitch, but you need a clear, simple elevator pitch that you can hand off to the press. So there's just some random screenshots that I took this morning of press write-ups from projects that I've done where, you can see it. Psychedelic virtual city makes music controlled by your brainwaves. Thing tracks listeners as music from the XX plays. Whatever it says here. Cut copies, stop motion music videos made with cute 3D printed figures. The Time magazine one was pretty cool because it was the only thing that my parents had ever heard of that I've done. It's always important to have some parent approval at one point. But anyways, there's videos of all of these projects on my website and on Tool's website, tons of videos. I thought it would be better to talk a bit than show half an hour of videos, but if anyone has any questions about research, collaboration, money, or anything else, I'm available. And thank you very much, everyone.
In fact, I had a load of questions and I've crossed them off as we go. You just seem to cover pretty much everything. Thank you. One thing just up was how important is story. It's story to have a story, and then, like you're saying, it's very important.
I think it's critical, especially when you have a lot of collaborators, that everyone can rally behind something that's very clear.
Yeah.
And story doesn't, like I was saying in the end, story doesn't need to be a very complicated, long sort of thing, but you need to have things very clearly defined of what the idea is and what you want people to do and how people can talk about it, especially if you want people to share your project and for it to become something that spreads a lot. The more complicated it is to explain it, the harder it is for people to share it. And I found that was something that I learned in getting projects approved early on. Was I had these ideas that I thought were really cool and crazy and cool, but they were too complicated in how I was writing them up, and I wasn't getting them approved because whenever you're asking for support or money from a brand or anyone, there's a marketing manager who needs to present it to a marketing director who needs to present it to a CFO. And if you can like give them a key image and a sentence or two to explain it, then they're going to be able to communicate your idea with that really clear, simple story. And if you fail to do it, it's really, really hard to get things approved because you normally won't be there beyond that first pitch or proposal.
Yeah.
So
it's really important to take yourself out of it, look at it from every angle, and nail that down. Yeah, before going and getting your collaborators and whatnot. And when you're contacting the PR companies, do you write the press release yourself almost, and then send it to them so they can submit and publish it themselves, or do you just give them like a synopsis and they will write their press release?
I don't contact PR people.
I mean, like the media, the BuzzFeed.
I mean, at this point now, I have relationships with everyone.
Yeah.
So if I do a new project, I get emails from Creators Project asking if I'm working on anything new. And But so what I do is try to really maintain relationships with the writers and email them personally myself instead of a person or marketing person or agency or client. When I begin projects, I let my clients know that I can handle that process because I think it's better that it's very personal and that it's coming straight from me. But I think early on, before I'd ever done a project that had received any press, what I did was try to collaborate with people who had, because the press, unfortunately, just likes to write about people they already know.
Sure.
And it's really hard to get them to write about, to listen when you don't have a relationship and if you don't have a PR company. So I think, doing a music video for an up-and-coming artist, these kinds of things are great to get your name out there in the beginning. And then once it's started, it kind of just snowballs and they're always looking for your next project.
Great. Last question then. How important is it not to be scared and challenge yourself?
I think for me, it's really important to be scared. I feel like if I'm not scared, then I'm not doing things right, that I become complacent and I'll get bored. So I'm scared shitless with every single project, and I'm like, just anxiety and stress, but it's the same thing for me as adrenaline, and I like it. If I don't have it, then it's like another day in the office.
Okay. And there was one more thing as well, because we talked about it outside. We were talking about saying no to work and how that's kind of important as well. It's very easy just to keep saying yes all the time. And why is that important? What were we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you'll start getting a lot of requests, and for the most part, there'll be projects that can pay well but aren't necessarily exactly what you want to do. And if you want to be always doing new things, you have to say no to repetitive things and say no to money and be willing to take the risk of not knowing what your next project is. So I try to only do like 4 projects a year right now, 4 commercial projects a year, and then 3 or 4 independent art projects a year. So my focus now is doing big commercial stuff and small art stuff, and I think it's really, really important to say no, because as soon as you're overwhelmed and you don't have the time to really do the research every day and to do passion projects, your work isn't going to go anywhere. It just becomes all about money, I think.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Aramique, thank you.